My name is Sarah, and 3 years ago, I turned my garage into a small candle making business. It started as a hobby after I lost my corporate job, but within a year, it was paying my mortgage. I thought I had built something nobody could take from me, that I was wrong. Because my neighbor, Diane, decided she didn't like the smell of vanilla and lavender drifting in her backyard. And she was about to find out that reporting me to the city was the biggest mistake of her life. Let me take you back to the beginning. When I lost my job in marketing, I was devastated. 2 kids, a mortgage, and suddenly no income. My husband's salary alone couldn't cover everything. So I did what a lot of women do when life knocks them down. I got creative. I started making candles in my kitchen. Small batches at first, selling to friends and local craft fairs. Within 8 months, I had outgrown the kitchen and moved everything into the garage. I got a business license, I registered with the state, I paid my taxes properly. Everything was legal. Everything was cleaned up by year 2. I was shipping orders across 3 states. I even hired 2 part-time employees from the neighborhood, teenagers who needed extra cash. I was proud. For the first time since losing my job, I felt like myself again. And then Diane moved in next door. Diane was retired, recently divorced, and, from what I could tell, bored. From the very first week, she had opinions about everything. My kid's trampoline was too loud. My dog barked too much. And then, one afternoon, she knocked on my door with her arms crossed. "Do you have a permit for whatever you're running out of that garage?" she asked, not even bothering with a hello. I smiled and told her yes, everything was licensed and inspected. She didn't look convinced. She said the smell of melted wax gave her headaches, and that she was going to look into it. I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured she'd cool off. But 2 weeks later, a city code enforcement officer showed up at my door with a complaint form in his hand. Diane had filed a formal report, claiming I was running an unpermitted commercial operation in a residential zone, creating noise pollution, chemical fumes, and unsafe fire hazards. None of it was true, but now I had to prove it. The inspector was polite but thorough. He walked through my garage, checked my ventilation system, my fire extinguishers, my business documentation. Everything checked out because I had done everything by the book from day one. But here's the part that made my stomach drop. As he was leaving, he mentioned something in passing. He said, this whole process would be a lot smoother if we still had Linda Marsh handling residential permits. She retired last year. New system's been a mess ever since. I froze. Linda Marsh wasn't just any city employee. Linda Marsh was me. Before I started my candle business, before I lost my marketing job, I had spent 6 years working in the city's planning and permits department under my maiden name. I had personally handled hundreds of residential and small business permit applications for that very neighborhood. In one of those applications, I remembered it clearly because it had been unusually messy, belonged to Diane. Here's what Diane never bothered to find out about her new neighbor. 3 years before she moved in next door to me, she had built an illegal addition onto her previous house, a converted sunroom that violated setback regulations and lacked proper permits. It had been flagged, delayed, and nearly denied twice that I remembered approving it, reluctantly, and only after she resubmitted corrected paperwork under pressure from her contractor. I remembered her name because she had called the office multiple times, frustrated, insisting the rules shouldn't apply to her. She had no idea that the woman who once quietly pushed her paperwork through the system was now standing in her garage, being investigated because of a candle-making business that followed every single rule Diane herself had once tried to skip. I didn't say anything right away. I just smiled, thanked the inspector for his time, and asked one simple question. Is there any way to formally request a review of the original complaint's accuracy? He said yes. All I had to do was submit a written response with supporting documentation. So that's exactly what I did. I didn't go straight to Diane. I didn't yell. I didn't confront her over the fence like she probably expected. Instead, I did something much more effective. I let the process work. In my formal response, I included every permit, every inspection report, every tax filing for my business. I attached photos of my ventilation system, my fire safety equipment, everything. The city reviewed it within a week and officially closed the complaint, ruling it unfounded. But complaints like this don't just disappear quietly. because Diane's complaint triggered a routine cross-check of the entire block, which meant every property, including hers, got flagged for a standard compliance review. And that's when her old sunroom addition came back into question. The permit records showed inconsistencies that had never been fully resolved. Inconsistencies that, back when I worked there, I had let slide because I felt bad for her. This time, a different inspector wasn't feeling generous. About 10 days later, I saw a city vehicle parked in Diane's driveway. I watched from my kitchen window as an inspector walked around her house with a clipboard, taking photos of the very addition I remembered approving years ago. That evening, she showed up at my door. Her arms weren't crossed this time. Her voice was shaky. "Did you do this?" she asked. "Did you report me?" In the end, Diane was required to bring her sunroom addition up to code, which cost her thousands of dollars in permits, inspections, and structural adjustments. My business, meanwhile, was cleared completely, and the city even sent a formal letter confirming there were no violations. Word travels fast in a small neighborhood. A few other neighbors who had heard about the situation started stopping by my garage, not to complain, but to buy candles. My sales actually went up that month. Diane and I don't talk much anymore. She waves sometimes. I wave back. There's no big dramatic showdown, no screaming match, just a quiet understanding that she underestimated who she was dealing with. I didn't set out to expose anyone. I just wanted to run my small business in peace. But if there's one thing I learned from this, it's that when you try to tear someone else down without knowing their full story, you might just end up exposing your own. If this story hit home for you, let me know in the comments. Have you ever dealt with a neighbor like Diane? And if you want to hear more stories like this one, make sure you subscribe because trust me, this isn't even the craziest story I have to tell. In the end, Diane was required to bring her sunroom addition up to code, which cost her thousands of dollars in permits, inspections, and structural adjustments. My business, meanwhile, was cleared completely, and the city even sent a formal letter confirming there were no violations. Word travels fast in a small neighborhood. A few other neighbors who had heard about the situation started stopping by my garage, not to complain, but to buy candles. My sales actually went up that month. Diane and I don't talk much anymore. She waves sometimes. I wave back. There's no big dramatic showdown, no screaming match, just a quiet understanding that she underestimated who she was dealing with. I didn't set out to expose anyone. I just wanted to run my small business in peace. But if there's one thing I learned from this, it's that when you try to tear someone else down without knowing their full story, you might just end up exposing your own. If this story hit home for you, let me know in the comments. Have you ever dealt